We have an awesome pai kōrero, pai whakawhiti kōrero I aia nei, wā tātou manuhiri, tuatahi ake Dr Gianna Leoni, Ngāi Takoto, Ngāti Kuri, Te Aupōuri, has been the chairperson of South Pacific Rugby League Club, SPRLSC, since 2009, but a member since its inception in 1994. This is a whānau-orientated sports club based in Dunedin and has grown from a single rugby league team to include basketball, netball, softball and volleyball for all ages and genders. Gianna is also a data specialist, te reo Māori at Te Heku Media, working on the Papareo, a multi-lingual language platform grounded in Indigenous knowledge and ways of thinking empowered by cutting-edge data science. And she's also looking to come home to Te Tautokero. Look, why wouldn't you want to be here? Whiti mai ana tamanui te rā. I've lived in o te poti for a bit and hara mai hoki te makariri. Nā reira nau mai. Chrissy Hilton, Ngāti Kahungunu, Ngāti Rangikoianake, Ngāti Ranginui, Te Arawa, tū whakarau mai rā kahu rānaki, heke ki ngā au o Poukawa e rere nei, mai ngā au o Poukawa ki ngā waitai o tauranga moana, tau mai ai te Māori o tōna waka ko Tāki Timu, e kōko ia e arae. Born in Hastings and raised alongside her whānau in Maraenui, Chrissy now lives in Tamaki Makaurau, where she dedicates much of her time to maurako, traditional Māori weaponry. Throughout her time in high school, tertiary studies, and her professional career, she found purpose in embedding the learnings and principles of maurako to tell and create innovative opportunities of system change for the Māori community. In October 2022, Chrissy reached the highest level in Te Wharetu Taua o Aotearoa and is now one of 3 wahine who have reached Pouwaru. With a number of other wahine and kohine now within the kaupapa, she is passionate about creating more opportunities for wahine to use the kaupapa and learnings for self-healing and empowerment. E te tuahine tēnā koe. Hurira wātu rā ki tēnei tūkau, no te mārau hine amaru, kia Takoha Ropati, he pātiki no ngā tai e rua o tauranga moana, he niu no ngā mautere o hā moa, he raukura anō hoki no te aho matua, ko Takoha o Ngātua Ropati tēnei. He pōako reo Māori ki te whare wānanga o Nui Arangi, he paiwhaka mahere rautaki ki te kohimihana o whānau ora, waihoki he tangata pakihi e kokiri nei ngā tini kaupapa Māori I te rāngai tū mataiti. Ko te kore tinana me te reo Māori, ngā tino kaupapa e hihiko nei tōna ngākau, te pāwhutuporo me te nakawhiti ana tino hā kinakina. Takoha is a graduate of Te Aho Matua schooling system and has since devoted his life to the revitalization of the Māori language through delivering te reo Māori courses as well as assisting organizations in building cultural capability within their own workspaces. He is also an accomplished touch player, reaching the highest level of sport in the sport, representing Touch Blacks, and more recently named captain of the 2023 Māori All-Stars Touch Team. What an All-Stars pai whiri kōrero we have here today. E ngā manuhiri nau mai haere mai whakatau mai ki tō tātou whare, I tēnei wā, I tēnei hauora. Ka tuku te rākau kōrero ki au koutou. We'll just hand around the rākau to introduce yourselves. Koe koe no hea koe ahakua, ko whakatakina ke ngā kōrero nei. Just, yeah, tell us a bit about yourselves. Starting off with you, Chrissy.
Kia ora te whānau. Ai he pene tēnei o Taki Tumuwaka. Ai Ngāti Kahungunu, Ngāti Rangikoianake, Ngāti Ranginui, Te Arawa anō hoki. Ko tōku mahi tuatai, he māmā hau, tokorua o aku nanakia. Ko tōku mahi anō, ka tū au hei tētahi pakoko tawhito roto I te wharetu taua o te Arawa. And tahi anō ka timata ki Toi Tangata. Amihi, tūku.
Tēnā koe tuahine. Kia koe Gianni.
Tēnā koe ewa, tēnā tātou I tēnei ata, ko te ata tonu tēnei. He uri tēnei no te nota, ko Ngāti Kuri, Ngāi Takoto, te Aupōuri, ngā iwi. Hioi, kei o te poti au e noho ana, and kei te heke te ua I tēnei rangi. Ko taku mahi I nāia nei, he te kupu Māori, he data specialist au ki Te Heku Media, so aha koa kei o te poti au e noho ana, kei te mahi au mo te kāinga, and he mahi tino miharo tērā māku. And ko tētahi atu o ku pōtai, he tūmaki o tētahi karapu hākinakina ki o te poti nei, e hioi ko taku pōtai, whakahirahira o tōku a ko he mama hoki ahai ki ngā tama ki taku kāinga.
Ia, tēnā koe te tuahine. E te mātanga raraunga pea, mataku tuakana takoha tera e amine pea. Te tuakana e takoha, kia koe, bro.
Kapai, tēnā koe te prata ko oti ke i a koe, te reka o taku kumara, te kōrero. Engari, ai, tautoko ana hau ngā kōrero o Ngāti hine hau, te taha nui oku, te taha o tōku māma hine amaru. Ko taku pāpai tipu mai i tāmaki makaurau, engari e hononga tōna ki Ngāti Ranginui, Ngāti Hangarau marae, ana he hononga ki a Chrissy. He taha hāmoa no hoki, nā koera te āhuatanga ki aku maihara, kai pōhehe kautau i tipu mai enei maihara i te ao Māori. Engari, no tōku taha hāmoa tērā, engari ai, ko tākoha tōku ingoa kei te komihana o whānau ora ki Waipareira, hau e mahi ana i ngā wā o te awatea, i ngā pō kei awanui ārangi a hau e whakako ana i te reo Māori. Ai, tēnā tātou.
Che, kia ora te whānau, tēnei te tira hau, tēnei te hara mai nei. A kore te tahu o tā tātou hui. But yeah, it's whānau, just, we'll jump straight into it. And we can popcorn, you just jump in as and when, but talk a little bit about your own personal journey with te reo and what that looked like. Who taught you and what might their aspirations or intentions have been or still are for yourself in that journey. Yeah, and kia reo rua, he nui ngā taumata reo Māori kei te whare nei, we're all at different levels, so yeah. Tukuna te rākau.
I te whai au i te raupapatanga tuatahi, I was following the first, wait, au ka pai. Tuatahi, I forgot to mihi tu ki aku tuahine, nā kōrua tēnei pai e ātāhu ai, nō reira tēnā kōrua, ko waimari e ahau. So I tupu ake au I roto I te kōhanga reo, so I'm very fortunate to be part of that Renaissance period. I didn't have to pakanga for my reo. Very fortunate to be brought up in Māngere. My mum, she was in the community, raised in Matawai and Ōpahi, and she didn't know the difference between te reo Māori, te reo Pākehā, te reo Hainamana. She thought they all spoke the same. So that was my mum's side. My dad, born and raised in Avondale, didn't know much about his Māori side. So our household was very bilingual, te reo Pākehā, te reo Māori. And going to kōhanga reo, a majority of the tamariki that went to our kōhanga reo were from all over the place. So all I knew was te reo o Māngere, which was a mixture of tūhoi, a mixture of te taitokero, a mixture of everything, and I thought that was our reo. Kura kaupapa, I went to te kura kaupapa Māori Arohui o Māngere. Me being an avid sports player, kura kaupapa unfortunately don't offer many team sports, so I did have a bit of a sojourn at secondary school at Onehunga High to play first 15 and other sports like that. And then I went on to AUT to study sport and rec. And then I rongo au I te moke, ki taku ao Māori, I tahuri anō, ki te whare wānanga o te aroa, kuhu atu au ki te pīnakitanga, nā kona I poipoi anō ai, I hihiko anō ai tēnei hia kai oku ki tō tātou reo. A lot of my reo today is learned through te whare wānanga and my kura kaupapa reo, and I thought I was flash. Wasn't as flash as I thought it was until I went into pīnakitanga. So that's my journey.
Keeping us on our toes, to find just popcorn, mate. Gianna.
Okay, go back. Ko taku haerenga I te reo Māori. So I feel like we can never tell these kind of stories without giving the whakapapa. And for me, that whakapapa starts with my nan. She moved away from Awanui in the far north when she was about 14 years old, moved to Auckland. From there, kind of lost a lot of her reo, met my grandfather, had my dad. My dad moved down to Ōtepoti when he was 18, 19 to go to art school. Met my mum, who was born and raised down here. And so for those, I'm not sure how many people are from Ōtepoti or have lived in Ōtepoti, but it's definitely, there's definitely a few of you. Lots of you have come and visited us as well. But down here in Ōtepoti, there's little pockets, now growing pockets of our Māori communities. But for me, growing up, we had kind of karakia. We learned karakia for kai, knew a couple of waiata, but it wasn't until I was in high school that I made this really staunch decision I must have been 14, 15, went to the fifth form dean hui before you start your, year 11? And I was like, I'm not doing science. I want to do te reo Māori. And he's like, oh, but that clashes. You have to do science. I was like, no, I don't have to do science. So that was for me. I just kind of made this decision. And a lot of that was to do with my relationship with my nan. So I'd spent a lot of time with her growing up. I was really lucky. She came down and helped when I was a little girl. And so for me, it kind of just, she must have planted this kind of seed. We never really talked much to each other, but she obviously had this kind of impact for me. So through high school, then left high school, went to the University of Otago, that's for me where my real journey really kind of took off. Went through undergrad, decided to do kind of honours and masters, and when I was nearing the end of my masters, me and my partner Sean, who had met in our first year reo Māori class, still together now have 2 reo Māori speaking babies, but we decided, we had thought that we were going to move to Australia because that's where lots of our whānau was. And then Professor Paewhiri, he's like, I've got a scholarship for you. I was like, okay, to be a part of a big kaupapa with him and Rawunia Higgins. So I was like, oh yeah, I always wanted to do I always wanted to do a PhD on te reo Māori anyway, might as well kind of take this opportunity. And whilst doing that, in those early stages of that PhD, I made another kind of informed decision. I was like, I need to write my PhD in te reo Māori. And for a couple of reasons, which actually kind of went against why people do write in te reo Māori in terms of the academic space. They're like, oh, no one reads it. I'm like, yeah, but people don't read it because they've got nothing to read. So that was one. I remember being asked if I was going to write other stuff in te reo Māori, and I was like, yep, that's was just kind of this path I had chosen. And so throughout my university, I had also been tutoring and lecturing in te reo Māori at the university. When I finished my PhD, got a job, an official job at the university. A couple of years in, I was like, oh, I'm a little bit over the university. And those that have worked in universities, especially out the, these mainstream universities, it can be a really tough space for young Māori, especially as a young Māori woman who's obsessed with te reo Māori. I was like, yeah, I'm a little bit over this. And so made a call to my mate, Suzanne Duncan at Te Comedian. I was like, hey, mate, got any mahi for me? Yep. Left the university and I've been working at Te Media ever since. And so now I get to do all the fun things with te reo Māori that I liked about my job at the university. I get to sit with archives. I get to listen to all of our old people every day. And so for me, that's been really kind of influential in terms of my reo Māori. My partner said to me, must have been last year, he's like, your reo has changed since you've been working at Te Media. And I was like, oh, what do you mean? He's like, just in terms of the fluidity and the way that I speak. And so for me, that's been really a really important step for me in terms of my reo journey, reconnecting with my whakapapa, getting to hear our old people. It's been a really kind of special and important part of my reo journey. Sorry, that went on, but whakapapa.
Mean sis, choice. Tētahi wāwai ki te kei o te waka, ne? Tētahi wāwai ki te hiko o te ika. Come home. Nah. So hene Chrissy, kia koe.
E pōhehe tō te nuinga he tangata ako tuatahi ahau. Tēnā pēr he pōhehe tā te mea he e karoputia ana iau I taku kāngarua I tupu Māori mai. He tangata ako tuarua ahau ki te reo. A lot of people mistake me for being a first language speaker, mainly because of the people that I'm associated with. But I tupu ake au, I te ahurea I tāmi nei, I te iwi Māori ki roto o Maraenui ki Kahungunu. I grew up in Maraenui and Kahungunu, and living in a predominantly Māori community where sort of being at the bottom of the food chain was pretty much all society told us we could be. And then fast forward to round about primary, my mum and I moved up to Devonport, where we started living with my auntie. So you can imagine what it was like for a 5-year-old going from Maraenui to Devonport, and how, going from a low socioeconomic community to a place completely out of the norm of what I was used to seeing. It was quite different space. But although I didn't grow up in a reo speaking environment, I'm grateful for what I did have. The way we grew up, it was like very much a whare Māori. We followed tikanga, was raised around my grandparents, raised by my aunties, raised by my grand aunties, raised alongside my cousins. And yeah, even though our first language was Te Reo Pākehā, our way of living was still very much ngākau Māori led. Yeah, and then I think the first time I heard Te Reo Māori was my koro, who's also kaumātua of the kaumātua of the iwi for Ngāti Kahungunu. And, alongside that, there was still like little words and phrases that we'd adopted as reo Māori growing up as well. And then when we would go back to the marae, I was one of those, the tamariki laughing when the nannies and koros would laugh, like I knew what they were saying, but I actually didn't. Just because they did it, I wanted to do it. So yeah, I always knew I was Māori, always had that sense. I'm a bit like Stacey. Always knew I was Māori, but just didn't have the reo. Knew it was always there, it was just dormant at the time. Fast forward, a couple of the people there have been influential in my huarahi in Te Reo Māori is my dad and Paewhiri Titan. My parents and I, we made our way from the North Shore and then we came over to West Auckland where my dad and my koko were both working in like Māori spaces, Māori mental health. And then at that time as well, we went to a wānanga. It was either a wānanga or whakamatoto, one of them. That's when I first met Paewhiri. Scary fella that didn't really believe my dad was my dad, because my dad has great genes and doesn't really age, or doesn't look like he does anyway. Still looks like my brother, gets mistaken for my brother. And then, I started high school. I did my first year at St. Joe's, Hatahoepa. And then I moved back to Auckland to finish off high school at Massey High out here, west side. And then at that same time, that's the same time that Paewhiri whāinga also started there. And so I guess it wasn't until I got to high school where I had sort of the maturity and the fearlessness to sort of reclaim my reo, sort of in my own time and my own matter. So I think, taku reo, nā te uri o Ngāti Hine I whakapakari, taku mita reo e hari a Ngāti Hine, engari o na kiwaha o na kupu kōrero ke roto I ahau. If you know, you know. A teacher is no good without a student, and a student is no good without a teacher. So I owe a lot to Paewhiri for helping sort of pave this pathway for me. E kia nā te kōrero, nā te hihi, te mahara, nā te mahara, te mōhio, nā te mōhio, te mātou, nā te mātou, te marama. Te tuturutango aku kōrero, he kōrero nā te tinana, me te mauri o te tangata. I've always been passionate about hākinakina and outdoor activities and stuff. So with Papa, Hemi and my dad both being in te wharititoa Aotearoa, reaching Paewhiri, Papa Hemi being a tohunga toi huarewa. I've been very fortunate to be around some very influential people who have helped guide me, and
Beautiful, sis. Tāhu wera kora kamutu brings us on to, let's get stuck into, te reo I ahu mai I ngā take ngā maitanga katoa I hikoi ai koutou, I tēnei wā nei I roto I a koutou mahi and what you do, what part does te reo play in what you do currently in your mahi, in your whānau, in your hapori, and then also what are some of those challenges that you come up against with te reo all the time in those spaces? What are some of the big challenges that we face, especially tēnei te tūrahau, us kind of coming through the generations now as we sit both very much in te ao huri-huri, I raro I ngā tāmitanga o te ao huri-huri, te ao Pākehā, plus you know, the other leg in the akoranga, the mātauranga te reo o te ao kōhatu, o te ao tawhito, wā tātou tūpuna e ora tonu nei, kua hinga hoki. So how do you kind of reconcile those challenges that we face, and what are those challenges, and how do you utilize te Māori in your everyday?
Ka whai tonu I te raupapatanga I te huringa tuatahi. He, pātai nui tēnā, te ke toru e whāpea ngā pātai roto I te pātai kotahi. Engari, ka nganau te whakautu I tētahi. Ko te mea, ko te pakanga nui, kaore ko atu ko te pakanga I te kāinga. Kia ora I te reo, ki wainganui taku hoa wahine, koera tētahi tino pakanga nui kei mua I te aroaro ia te rā, ka mutu, I whānau mai taku tamaiti au e taitamariki tonu ana, nei pēra hoki o ku whakaaro, kaore tino whāngai ki te waiu o te reo Māori, e kite ana I ngā hua o tērā whakatupurangi nānei. Ko taku tamahine, ko tupu Māori mai, e rere noa ana te reo. Nō reira, ko koira te pakanga nui, kia mirimiri, kia whai te rongoa, kia rena I te reo ki wainganui I tōku whānau I te tuatahi, koira te pakanga nui. Ko te pakanga tuarua ko aku mahi he whakaako I te reo Māori, e kite ana hau I ngā momo tauira, e tomo mai ana I roto I te whare ki te ako I te reo. E harai te mea ko te reo anake, te whāinga matua. Ko te nuinga o rātou, kei te whai tēnei mea te tuakiritanga, ko taku hoa Rāniere Harrison nāna te kōrero, te nuinga o rātou kei te rapu I te ki. Ko te ki e rapu nā rātou, ko te ki e tūwhera ana I te wānanga ki wainganui o rātou taringa. Ko te reo tētahi huarahi, ko te whai I te maurākau tētahi atu, engari ko te tino whāinga o ngā hunga e ako ana I te reo, kei te rapu rātou I tētahi ki e tūwhera anō ai te tirohanga ki te ao Māori. Nō reira, me āta pai rautaki ki ia akonga, ki ia tauira, ētahi tauira he horo ki te ako, ētahi atu tauira kaore tino horo ki te ako. Nō reira, ko ngā pakanga nui ki runga I au ākai ako nei, ko te whakahāngai. Kia whai patanga ai aku whakaakoranga ki a rātou, kia pai ai tā rātou rapu I era momo ki. Ētahi taima ko te pana I a rātou I taku akomanga, e hara tēnei te huarahi mau, te rapea, haere koe ki a wiremu, ako I te mau rākau. Engari, ko te painga o te reo Māori he timatanga. He timatanga, ko tau mahi, he poipoi, he mirimiri, ana, ko I puta ia neni moe te kōrero, ki roto I te reo Māori he rongoa, hei mirimiri I te wairua, me te hinengaro o te tangata. Nō reira, ko au, he kai mirimiri ki ahau, harau te kaiwhakaako reo, kei te mirimiri ahau I te wairua I te hinengaro o te tangata, kia pai ai tā rātou whai I te reo Māori. So yeah, ka pai, e rua ngā whakautu ki e rā pātai e rima, reira tēnā koe, kia koe te wā, tākuta Gina.
Tēnā koe, bro. Rawe tērā, like those challenges, those massive challenges start in the home, especially with our whānau, our own whānau. So, e mihi ana I rā koro, I rā whakaro, you know, with our kids, with our spouses, especially if they're not Māori themselves. He nui tātou e noho whānau, iwi, huhua nei, and then obviously in your own mahi as a kaiako too, finding the keys and those rautaki to open the door, e tūwhera ai, e pūrangi aho ai, te huarahi ki mua I te akonga. So, Shopo, tēnā koe. Yeah, kia koe te tāputa.
Once again, we're going to go on a whakapapa journey. So when I was at university, one of my friends, Māori friend, I've staunch on this journey of doing Māori studies, and he goes to me, why are you doing Māori studies? You're not going to get a job with Māori studies. And I think a few of us have heard this kind of kōrero before. And my response now was, te reo Māori has since leaving the university, that's all my life has been my employment. My world around me has always been te reo Māori, so it's a little bit like it's no longer relevant, which is, I think, a really important and powerful moment that we've come to. So because for me back then, that was a challenge, me changing my thinking in terms of the benefits and ko te hua o te reo Māori. And so now raising two tama, that's one of the challenges that we've overcome is kia au ki te reo Māori, ki te kāinga, ki wahui te kāinga, ki te hauōuri, because ki Ōtepoti nei, ko te reo Pākehā, and e ai ki te Kaute Nui, the census, previously French was the second most spoken language in Ōtepoti, in Dunedin. So for us, it's been really important for us to find our community that will speak te reo Māori. But one of the coolest things for us, kei te kōrero Māori ki ngā tama, and ko te tama e toru tana pakeke. So ka marama ia, ka kōrero Māori ki a hau, e mina kei te taha o etahi whānau, etahi hoa, kari te marama ki te reo Māori, ka whakamarama ia ki a rātou. So we've grown this bilingual speaking child without even kind of realizing. He'll go and he'll translate into English for his mates. And that was something that for us, we've spoken about in terms of being really intentional with te reo Māori, speaking to him, because similar to what was spoken yesterday and earlier today, English is always going to be there. They're going to pick it up no matter what. So for us, having that environment to now, I was always worried because lots of our whānau don't speak te reo Māori. I'm the only one of my generation of my nan's mokopuna that can speak te reo Māori. But what's been really cool is seeing their buy-in to learning te reo Māori for my kids, because they want to be able to have conversations with them and they want the space for them to feel comfortable in that space. And so for me, that's really cool. In terms of, I guess, because how many questions was there? There was like 5. My work is all about te reo Māori. So at Te Huku Media, we are building a bunch of awesome technology. So we talked about AI a little bit earlier in Stacey and Scotty's talk. And I completely agree that we need to walk with caution. But, you know, we can do everything with our phones these days. And so one day, it would be really awesome that we can do all of that in te reo Māori. And so that's one of our big aims, is to be able to create ethical technology that so Peter Lucas Jones, our CEO, one of his, I guess, sayings that he's done when he's done an interview was, you can't just say it, tika girl, you've got to do it, tika too. And that's something that we firmly believe in terms of how we do everything. So our reo Māori experts that we go to when we're doing all of our mahi, they're really, really important. No matter what the data and everything else that we have, it comes back to te reo Māori. Yeah, that's enough from me. Otherwise I could kore moake tōna atu. Chrissy.
Especially when you're talking about AI and how that is informed, because as you say, like ko ngā kaipupuri o te reo, ko tātou ko ngā mātanga ko a tātou kuia kaumātua, but it's here. That's the thing, eh?
Yeah, kua tai, like it's here, and there are a bunch of companies, big tech, doing stuff with data, scraping the internet, and you know, if we can do what we can to create awesome, ethical, quality, koinga ake tools, then I'll be happy.
Sorry, there was 4 questions or something like that, but yeah, te reo I roto I au mahi I kamutu me ngā wero, ngā challenges. What do you
So, yeah, it's definitely in my mahi. One of, yeah, but like Tuck's, like the bro, usually at night times, I teach mōrākau, and then during the day, I'm doing more mahi around te ao Māori, more so in the taiao now with my new role within Toi Tangata. Pretty much soon as I left school and I went to university, I straight away did Māori development, just because I saw the gaps, and it was more so going to like mainstream kura, I saw the gap between the Māori that went to mainstream and then our rau kura kaupapa. And I always been passionate about just trying to find ways to help those less fortunate. You know, growing up in the community that I did, it was like, oh, how can we better offer solutions for those that don't get to grow up around te ao Māori. And I'm very much an intuitive person. I trust my puku a lot. So I usually just sort of, it's more like trusting the process, and definitely come up against challenges, especially around te reo. And one thing that I've noticed is that it's just, you really have to be fearless, and a bit like what Te Aorere said yesterday, it's okay to make mistakes. You just have to really have to be kind to yourself. And not like, making mistakes is okay. It's just as long as you learn from them, sort of thing. Pēra hoki, roto I ngā mahi maurako. Make a mistake, you get hit. Obviously, that's just he tohu, you need to block. Something like that, you know, if I was to put it like that anyway. But it has. It's definitely been important within my mahi. And also, you know, not trying to be kaungākene, like some of my whānau, you know, we can't all be kaunga straight away. You know, he wānanga roa, he wānanga nui, tēnei mea te ako. Especially for our reo, and it's just taking bit by bit.
And that's a good segue into, you know, kori ha kina kina. How can we navigate the challenges for whānau when it comes to kori, such as access to taiao, costs, equipment? How have you found te reo existing in this like the sector of hauora, kori? In your fellows' experience?
Hapai, tēnā koe tawa pātai, a lot easier than the first one. Still hard. But so my experiences in sport, one, kiorahi. So I'm a big participant of kiorahi at a playing capacity, coaching capacity, and just an advocate of kiorahi in itself. And then Pāwhitu Paoro touch. So I'll probably just share those experiences for Pāwhitu Paoro and kiorahi. Within the kiorahi space, it's very natural to be yourself, because it is a Māori environment. The rules and the kōrero behind that kēmu create an environment for just to express yourself as Māori. So te reo Māori is just a natural way of kōrero. I think kiorahi itself unlocks a lot of storytelling and pūrākau, which touch rugby doesn't really do that. So there are levels to kiorahi. In terms of the touch scene, nationals and international level of touch, as much as you try and push te reo, so we've got our own individual players that have really put their hand up in terms of speaking and revitalising te reo within themselves. So an example being Mita Graham, Te Aorere in our sports. So they're the real advocates for te reo Māori, but I think there is a need within the touch space, especially with New Zealand touch, given that the majority of our participants are Māori. There needs to be more emphasis around te reo Māori and the use of it within that sport in particular. Māori Touch does a really great job in terms of their kaupapa and bringing our Māori together, but I think te reo Māori shouldn't just be for Māori. There should be aspects of te reo Māori within Touch New Zealand that it allows all of tangata no Aotearoa to be able to express that, because we see it at the international stage when our youths perform the haka, you know, so that's only a small part of being exposed to te ao Māori. And I think we've got enough personnel probably not at the table, but enough personnel within the community of touch to be able to bring something together. That te reo Māori has been used by all people within Aotearoa. All right. That wasn't really an answer. That was just my thoughts. Anyway, I'm going to pass it to someone else. Kia ora.
Follow the same rautaku.
Yeah.
Gianni, kia koe.
Kapai. So I guess this goes to my other portai, my South Pac portai. So down here, South Pacific Rugby League and Sports Club, otherwise known as South Pac, PACFAM. We're quite unique down here as a sports club for two reasons. One, we have a 75% rate of Māori in Pacific Island, mostly Māori. And the other part is we're one of the only multi-clubs in Ōtepoti. So we have rugby league, basketball, netball, touch, volleyball and softball. We now have over 200 members that kind of play across our different sports. And I guess part of my role, everyone in our club knows for me how important Te Reo Māori is. When we have our hui, when we have our prize giving, when we have anything, Te Reo Māori is always there. But for the past few years, everyone's been asking, like, Gianna, where can I access Te Reo Māori? What can I do? Like, I don't have enough time and all of these kinds of things. So last year I was like, fine, I've had enough of this. We're going to do our own Te Reo Māori kaupapa. So I applied to Te Mātāwai and we got funding for some reo classes, which are still running at the moment. And for us, that's just been a safe space for a lot of our members to start their reo journey. And that's been kind of really important for us because down here, we're probably one of the only clubs other than the Kura, when you hear them at kind of T-ball and their different sports, we're one of the only clubs where you'll hear reo Māori, whether that be in our cheers, whether that's me being like, cousin, kei te haere, kei te taha matau, and we'll go that way. And so for us, it's just kind of like building bit by bit and normalizing it in our sporting community, because not only do we look different, play differently, our language is also a really important part of who we are. I also haven't really answered the question, but for me, that's how te reo Māori in terms of kore and hākinakina. It's been really special for me to see that kind of grow within our club, just because for me it's important, but now to see people come on that journey is epic.
I'm going to follow trend and probably sort of answer the question that you asked. From my perspective, for especially in Mōrākau, there's lots of misconceptions. Very, very much so. A lot of people think when we do Mōrākau, the style variation that we do from Kahungunu, people sort of just see us and then they think we're just there to hit people. Engari, e ai ki te kōrero ko tā te wharetu taua he tiaki. When we in the house of two, our main what we should really be doing is we should be protecting. So it's more about protection rather than trying to beat people up or, and when people sort of think about Mōrākau, it is very much tāne-led, but with, day and age now, a lot of people are coming into it, and a lot of them are our kohine and our wahine. And so it's, at the moment, one of the challenges is trying to find the duality within the kaupapa, te taha wahine, te taha tāne, te taha Māori kura, te taha whatu kura, and how do we sort of give people the opportunity to learn both side by side rather than one is more predominant than the other. That's been one of the main challenges. And then alongside that is also is like the reo within the kaupapa. One of the, one of the sort of things that you have to make sure that you sort of work on as a kai tarako is making sure that you're doing your part in reclaiming your own reo, whether you are a first language speaker or a reo rua. Especially once you go a bit higher up in the kaupapa and you get a bit more high papa within Te Wharetu Taua. How are you sort of reclaiming that for yourself in your own whānau? Both of my babies are first language speakers, and it's also because of the people that they're around as well. They go to kura kaupapa, they've been to kohanga, and so majority of the time their sport is coming with us to trainings, and then they're wanting to hop in, do the waiwais, do the taiaha, all of that stuff. I'm pretty sure I didn't answer the question either, but those are some of the challenges. Ngā mihi.
Te whakatupu i ngā tamariki, mā te titiro ki ngā tauira. What I think, like I'm hearing, what's the difference, ki o koutou whakaaro, what's the difference, inspiring te reo in our people, ahakoa kōwaia, ahakoa kihia, inspiring people ki te reo. What are some of those good examples that you've seen out there currently that make a difference in that space? Or rather in the spaces that you work, what are those differences that, inspire people to or not, like what makes the difference when we're talking about language revitalization in the Kuri space, in the Hakinakina space, or any other spaces? What are kaupapa out there that are just like, he mea whakaawe awe I te iwi Māori kia tahuri mai ki tōna reo, and what can we be doing more of, potentially?
Pai, tēnā koe taua pātai. I will attempt to try and answer this one. Kia nei, different communities require different opportunities, I guess, in having a variety of opportunities that our whānau can access is important. Each whānau have their own unique circumstances. For example, they might already have real champions within the whānau, so in terms of the requirements to help strengthen that particular line might be a little bit unique, but ka hoki pēr hau ki ngā whakaaro o tāne. Tāne nui arangi iae kake ana, ko ia te mea I toko I te rangi, ki te ao mātauranga. Right? He was the one that opened the space of mātauranga. Ka heke mai, anā ko tāwhaki, nāna te mātauranga I tiki, I whāngai ki te iwi. And then ko ka heke kia Māui, nā Māui I taki, I whakatauira. So within those three things, I probably try and relate it to someone within your space that's a mātanga or an expert within the language. The next one is the person that feeds that language, which is the pauako or the kaiako. And then someone within that space that shares the example. And I guess we need people at all three of those levels in order for that space to grow. Some people are going to be learning te reo for the first time within the whakapapa line in the last 3-4 generations. Me ko tāne ia. Right, he becomes tāne nui arangi, who opens that space of learning. The person that then follows that person is the one that's going to gain that knowledge and then share it with the whānau. And then from there, you've got tamariki that are going to live and breathe it as if they were Māui. Ne kei te Māori no ana te reo ki wainganui a rātou. And without thinking about or considering those three different aspects of the reo, it's going to be very challenging to make it sustainable. And so, we need to have programs and also vision to be able to identify where that whānau is in terms of the spectrum of the reo. Some of them may have not access to that. No one's opened that knowledge yet. Some people have. Where are areas that you can use to assist? So I think the wānanga and the pōako and our reo spaces that we offer in terms of curriculum are just one aspect. But there are other people that are targeting different areas that are helping within the whānau. And I very much support the reo being revitalised in the whānau first, because as soon as that's established, by strengthening it by joining into other communities, it just helps it sustain. So, koira tāku, me āta whakaaro ki etahi pūrākau tawhito, hei tauira ki te whakatinana I te rānei, o reira. We could probably go even further with that, but he whakaro.
Love that, love that. Gianni.
Fine. I guess for me, and what I experience at Witness, one of the important things that I think I noticed first for my kids is that they have reo Māori role models in different aspects of their lives in different domains. So that's at their puna reo, it's at hākinakina, it's when they're at home, it's when we're out in the community. So for me, it kind of stems back to it kind of whakatauki mā te huruhuru te manu karere. So with, with the language, our tamariki will fly, but mā te taki, te hui kātau, but, with that kind of direction, we'll all arrive safely at that destination. And so for me, this is a really poto answer compared to my other ones. That's something that's really important. And even as much as watching television and seeing te reo Māori being used in domains that it's not usually used in. So it's been really cool watching like ANZ netball, and you hear them speaking reo Māori as a normal thing. That's the kind of language of communication, not just as like a formal kind of use of te reo Māori in that space. So hearing the language in different kind of domains is really important.
Pērā hoki a kōrero. He tāpiritanga hoki. Māma te whakahua ua te whakatinana. It's always easy saying stuff, but sometimes the hardest thing is actually practically applying it. So with what Tak said about the pūrākau of Tāne and the kōrero that Gianna shared as well, the normalization of our reo has probably really enabled both te inamata me te anamata to really strive and normalize te reo Māori within our everyday lives. I know for watching my babies, them being first language speakers, their reo Pākehā is shocking. But, they very much learnt from te pauaka whakaata, not Cocomelon, just like all the Disney shows and stuff. So seeing that, and then also, like what Gianna was saying, seeing it being normalized on our sports, and even at the Saturday sports that tamariki have, going past some mātua, you can hear them talking to their whānau and te reo. It's humbling, and it's very much, we're very much on the right track, I think. Still a long way to go, but definitely heading in the right track.
Beautiful. Tux was talking about, those mātanga, those tauira we have and we look to for, especially in the reo space. So ko wai pēr etahi o iho pūmanawa o te reo Māori, he aha hoki pēr ai for you fellas in your lives I tēnei wā.
Wai he ahua nui te rārangi ingoa ki taku iho pūmanawa. I think ko te āhuatanga o te taiao, he pūmanawa oku I te ao hākinakina, ko ngā kai hākinakina kaunga ki te kōrero Māori, ko ētahi anō ko ngā iho pūmanawa I te kāinga, ko ngā tamariki, ko ngā pepe e patere noa mai ana te reo, na he tino iho pūmanawa tēnā ki au. And all of our parents as well, our parents that really put a lot of effort into immersing their tamaiti and their tamariki into te ao Māori, to the level where they're able to express their feelings in te reo Māori is just, that amazes me, and it empowers me, it encourages me. I don't want to name drop anyone because I might miss out names, but I know there are a lot of whānau out there that have drawn the line in the sand where that, no, my tamaiti and my kāinga is only going to be for te reo Māori, and I see the fruits of that. And it really encourages me to sort of continue on the journey, because sometimes I feel like I'm losing, especially with my older boy. And so what I try and do best is just keep encouraging and keep setting an example. And eventually I'm hoping he's going to see the fruits of all of that mahi. But yeah, mai iho pūmanawa, the parents, the kaumata kuia, the whānau, they draw the line in the sand and, you know, really immerse their tamaiti and mokopuna in te ao Māori.
Yeah, mahi nui te rei. I te kōrero pērā, Stacey Rawa ko te manahau, mō tērā hikoi tanga Arawa.
Oh, orete, I reckon. And one thing that you touched on, Takoha, that I really liked was that it's now kind of, even despite how young our children are, they are now kind of doing that for other people. Like at 3 years old, Rangiaho is the one that people, like our friends and family that don't have the reo, that they look to him and he's teaching them. I'm like, you're 3. And it's really, really special and really, really cool, and quite heartening, that we're raising these kids that have the courage and the confidence to be able to do that, because they don't know any different. Te reo Māori is te reo Māori. I remember hearing they must have been 5 or 6, and one of them asked, how do you speak Māori? And his response was, ka reo e te mōhio. And so for him, he's just like, I just do. That's just how I speak. And for me, that's always really resonated, that, you know, te reo Māori, I say normalize, but I don't know if we really mean normalize anymore. I feel like we're trying to move away from that a little bit. We just want it to be, and what is normal. But I always use that kupu, but what we really mean is just to be that reo. And like, I don't really want to kind of name drop, because there are so many important people for our lives, but they have been really kind of significant in terms of that, and being that face and that kind of that māngai for te reo Māori and our e tō tātou ao, I guess. It's not really answering the pato, but Chrissy, yeah,
yeah, I'm not going to name drop either. Ko tata katoa, yeah, tata katoa. Everybody who's, you know, making a conscious effort and being consciously aware of how we can better provide all of that Te Ao Māori has to offer for not just us, but also our babies as well, especially our babies. Yeah, but like the kōrero from the last couple of days, it does take like 3 generations to really, you know, get our language up again where it should be, where it's meant to be. And yeah, I think, yeah, Dr Gianna have said it all.
So it's ka huri tātou iane ki etahi o nei pātai, some of the pātai that have been dropped in the Q&A. Ia koutou pakeke ana aini kua tōtika tō aro ki te mita o tōu ake kāinga, kua noho ki ngā reo I whakatupu mai koe. Yes, so this question around mita, I suppose, how have you reconciled that as you've moved through your spaces and your real journey?
Pai, tēnā koe kawiti. Pai tērā pātai, I te mea kei taua huarahi tonu ahau. Te ako I tōku reo ake I roto I a Ngāti Hine. Tuatahi, he tino rereke te reo Ngāti Hine. He kanga te nuinga o te wā. Kei pōhehe he reo pāke, engari ki a mātou o Ngāti Hine, he reo pāke, he S. Toto tāua reo. He oi ki au nei, e kore pēr e eke ki taua taumata. I te mea I tupu ake rātau I roto I taua ao, ko te tai au I taua wā I rereke. Ahakoa e whai ana hau I te huarahi o te mite, mohi ana hau he ao hau tēnei. Nō reira, me pērā hoki te aro ki te reo. Kei kona ētahi hua, e pai ai te kai ki te toro atu ki e rā momo kiwaha, engari ki te whakaro mena e pirangi ahau te hāngai pūtaku reo ki te mito o te kāinga kaore pēr eke ki tērā kaumata. So for me, that's a constant battle and constant challenge to try and implement kupu from kāinga. being brought up in Tāmaki Makaurau, you get taught so many different kupu and you don't really learn the whakapapa and the origins of that kupu, not until you go home and then your kuia say, oi, hara no konei i rā kōrero. And you're just like, oh, geez, so what is the kōrero? And then they don't share it with you. You know, so I'm in that constant battle, and it's not until you constantly go back and then you start realizing that your reo starting to change very much, how Dr Gianna mentioned, her interactions with the huku media, her reo starting to gain a little bit of traction in terms of the mita there. So there was a debate at Te Taumata Reo Wānanga ages ago, and it was around ko te mea nui, ko te ako puka puka, ko te noho reke reke rānei. Is it more important to learn from a book or to sit with your kaumātua and kuia? And I think they both had their bonuses. The only tricky part around noho reke reke ko mate mate haere ngā taumata, ngā kaumātua kuia, ko ngaro taua momo reo. But if I ever did have the opportunity to sit next to my kaumātua and be able to be immersed and absorbed, then without a doubt, that would be what my reo would sound like. And although all the kiwa have now been digital, you can find it online and you see examples, that nothing beats just being immersed in that environment. That's the only sort of way that I feel you can really understand the intricacies of mita and reo. You need to be immersed, you need to sit next to these kaumātua and kuia, and you don't often get opportunities to do that, especially for those of us living away from home. So yeah, that's probably, I've probably added more questions to your questions in that particular answer, so tēnā koe.
Nah, not at all, bro. Nah. Tuahine, aroha mai, I've been saying Gianna, and because I'm one of my best mates from Italy, when you know, my opera world, ko Gianni, tana ingoa. He mihi tera. Anyway, yeah, he hao whakaro mo taua, and especially with listening to all the archival stuff, Tuahine, you'll hear all that mita all the time. So yeah, te whakarongo ki era, me te whakarongo hoki ki te kōrero, te reo Māori rere ana, ienei rā.
Ai te kātai. I remember at my nan's tangihanga back in 2016, in one of the minutes, so I gave some kind of kōrero, and then after the nehu and stuff, I had this minister come up to me, he's like, oh, i ako koe I tō reo ki te whare wānanga. And I was like, oh, and he's like, oh yeah, I can hear it. And I was like, okay. And it was like kind of like a light switch for me. I was like, right, what do I need to do to kind of further my reo? Because, you know, it's always a big journey. And so that was probably Suze's first like tick. She's like, yeah, I've linked her in because now we can get her to come work for home. And you mentioned the archives. And so we have over 30 years of radio interviews, audio visual interviews as well. And yeah, I get to sit and listen to those every day. So I'm really, really fortunate. But a big part of our mahi that we're doing is making these accessible, especially for our people. Like you mentioned, Takoha, most of the whanaunga that descend from the far north don't live there. It's like 70-80% don't live in the far north. So part of the mahi that we're doing is trying to make those things accessible. So head to our website, tehuku.nz. There's a bunch of the archives up there. But we are doing kind of more to get them out there. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but we are also building an app specifically about our kupu o te whānota. So we've had kind of some of our experts give us heaps of these cool kupu, because man, there's some cool kupu from the far north for different things. So that's on ways as well. So yeah, that's for me, being able to kind of immerse myself in those archives is the next best thing that I can do to sitting next to my kaumātua, because I get to kind of hear them every day. And I think we talk a lot about, in our space, we talk about what is like a native sound, and that's kind of what we're talking about a lot at the moment, and how we can kind of mimic or kind of get back to that native sound, because the introduction of English really changed the way te reo Māori sounds, really. So how can we kind of go back to that? And you also mentioned ako puka puka, you know, most of our untouched reo Māori that's kind of been uninfluenced by English is in the Bible, is te paipera tapu, right? It's kind of our old newspapers, it's all of that stuff. So there's so much resource out there that we can kind of learn from. Yeah, kanui tērā.
Kia ora, kamutu mihi ana kia koe kia koutou rā, ai mahi ana i nei mahi nui. Chrissy, pēhea koe?
The reo that I'm around is not the mita that I grew up, that's from the iwi that I'm from. Hanga rite tonu ki Taks, very much around the Ngāti Hene slang. Yeah, kupu kanga kanga, all of that.
What are some of your favourite ones? Oh,
No, my favourite one's manga manga. Yeah, no. Hoi anō. Yeah. Now that I'm older and now, especially now that I've reached where I have in the whare, both my rangatira and I have sort of made it our main priority this year to, you know, ki atu ki kahungunu, ako ana I te mita I ngā pūrākau I te reo o kahungunu. And so we're very much on that journey now. Definitely still always a constant journey. You never really stop learning along the way. But yeah, that's winner.
I just noticed the pātai there from Renee's asking what are the differences they use in, or you use in the use and type of reo between urban Māori they live with and the reo te kāinga o Ngāti Hene. Maybe that's directed at you, Takoha. But yeah, like how there's this emerging kind of national standard reo too. So on this topic of mita, there's also our reo a motu. Or especially the reo that you do find in those urban spaces. He whakaroa koutou mō tērā?
Ka pai, kia au nei, ko te reregetanga, te tuatahi, ko te hunga, ko tupu mai roto I te kāinga, e harai te mea kei te whakaro rātou ki ngā kupu, ki ngā rerenga, en ka rongo koe I tērā. Ka tīmata ki te whakaro, ana ko te kaiwhakairo o te whakaro ko te kupu. Ko te hungai ako ana I te reo I te whare wānanga, ka tīmata ki te kupu, ka tīmata ki te whakamauri ngā whakaro. Oi, koera pia te rerekētanga. And so one of the challenges that we have in terms of trying to meet in between is the starting point of where we create language. A lot of our learners in university start with the language itself and then trying to translate what they're thinking. Whereas the people that are immersed in the environment, that grow up with our kaumātua kuia and our native speakers, they start with the whakaro, and the output of that is the structure of the language. And you can tell that by how fluid the speaker is speaking. And so the only way you're going to overcome that as a learner in the urban environment is immerse yourself. Expose yourself to as many different speakers as possible. You know, find your own style and your own space within te reo Māori. And also make sure that it's relevant to your world. Like an example that we do is I've got quite a few mates that live in the urban setting that come from different backgrounds of te reo. And what we did is we started a touch team, Ngā Tūru, and I know some of you guys are watching. That's an opportunity for us to just coexist, and sport happens to be that meeting point for us. And for me, that's an opportunity for me just to mix and mingle and listen to the different wairu of reo that will then in turn help create my own fluency in the reo. So in terms of the urban setting, yeah, that's probably the only thing. Kua āhua hanga taiapa te reo, and you have to do that in terms of learning the reo. You need to know the structures. But as soon as you move home, it's almost being brave enough to remove those taiapa. You know, because you get drilled so hard about, no, ko te reo kia tika, anei he a, he o, ana he I, he ki. As soon as you go up north, they don't play by the rules. Right? I te mea kei te tīmata ki te whakaro. Right? And a part of you become quite critical in terms of your whanaunga speaking te reo to you as well. And you almost feel like you're a police officer listening to your whanaunga kōrero Māori. But the beauty of their language is they're not thinking about it. Ne kei te ora, te reo I roto I a rātou. And I think we need to sort of be open to being not so critical and just being open. Ngā koutuwhera ne, kia tūhono I ngā ao e rua, because I think both worlds can coexist and both of them can complement each other. Because I know a few whanaunga up north that will say, no, not te whare wānanga tau reo. I was like, yeah, you could benefit from learning some of this. You know, that combined with what you have creates a whole nother level of speaker. Nō reira, yeah, koera tāku.
Remembering too that we've come through, you know, this process of colonization where successive generations, you know, kaiti ho te reo, kaiti ho te reo, tai atu rā ki te rea ngā kaumātua kuia, wetahi, e kōrero, you know, kua pakari ake ana I roto I te reo I tēnei wā, engari ki hai tino pakari I a rātou tuku ake ana. So yeah, like it's so multifaceted, ne?
En ko ngā tauira o te reo, ko era hopu oro no era rautau ki muri. Whakarongo ana koe ki ngā oro o ngā tupuna, hapakore. You know, and they didn't think about grammatical structures. You know, it was just a part of their world. So I think that's a challenge in itself for us. Now that we've got into the stage where we're really critiquing, it's now being brave enough to remove those critiques and just live in the space. And then hopefully our community will help strengthen those reo. But yeah, kia ora.
Tautoko marikau I ngā kōrero tako hei tira. One of my biggest learnings since working for Te Huku Media has been my unlearning of things that I picked up at the university, especially being, you know, a lecturer and having to be like, this is how it is. And that's been really cool and being really it's been quite freeing. Is this, and Takoha mentioned that, like when you hear some of the reo from the kaumātua, from these people that, you know, were born in the early 1900s, and you hear them run kupu together, and like in my previous university brain, I was like, well, that's 5 words. But actually it was 1 word, and that's all good. And that's kaitapai, because you're right, Takoha, they just talk, they just think, and they just let it go. And that's been something for me in terms of the different domains that I'm in terms of urban versus te kāinga and stuff like that. It's just been the unlearning, and it's just, yeah, super freeing. So let it go.
There's different modalities of learning. One's like you grow up in it, so it's a passive, like he whakatawiratanga, and versus like being spoon-fed rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chrissy, whakaro anō hei tāpiri atu?
No, tika ana ngā kōrero, and I think just, yeah, to add on to, you know, about the grammar and te whakatikatiko o te reo, sometimes that's the stuff that will put people off as well, trying to learn or keep going, to maybe ko eke ki tētahi atu taumata, especially within te reo Māori, so we can all be like Māoris. Be kaunga ake nei at 21 years old. Nah. Yeah, he oi anō, nā tautoko marikau I ngā kōrero, and same thing for me, for when I was learning te reo, I couldn't learn from a book. Just, yeah, I couldn't, my ability to retain something that was like in a book wasn't that great. But then when I would be doing something like a mōrākau, or even, you know, haere ki te ruku, that's where I would hear the little gems and stuff that Papa, that my dad, that always say, and then those are the things that would stick. That only the good stuff sticks sometimes. So I think sort of dependent on how a person learns as well, will be how they sort of are better able to learn te reo Māori, whether it is urban or te reo o te kāinga. You know, like, te reo matawaia, man, fast. Te reake, you gotta have taringa steel, man, to try and pick up everything they say. Engari, a tāhua ake nei te rongo, you know, just like, yeah, just, you're beautiful. I always love just like gobsmacked, just like listening, yeah.
Ai, te reo kauta. Maharau, mai maharanau ki te awa tātou whaia, Pepi Walker, Joan Walker I ona wā, matawaia. First time I ever heard her speak, you know, when I kind of was a bit kaumātua ake, it was like a machine gun. So yeah, tika tonu, te rā reanga, puta noa mai o te reo. Ko tai tātou pēr ki te mutinga mai o tō tātou wānanga, e hoa mā hono. If there's any kind of final thoughts you might have for our whānau sitting here, kei te whakarongo ki a tātou kōrero nei. Yeah, hea tahi kōrero whakamutunga. whakaaro whakamutunga kei a koutou mo tō tātou kaupapa o te reo.
Ētahi kōrero whakamutunga, I think just going back to our kōrero around hākinakina, and then just after sharing the kōrero around the reo, the hākinakina space provides the perfect opportunity for whānau to engage in the reo, where it becomes a little bit more comfortable. Things like anxiety and fear and all of those things have sort of just withered away when you're in a sporting context. So having a combination of both te reo and hākinakina in that type of space, you know, really optimizes learning opportunity for whānau. So for all of our whānau listening, if, you know, we're creating these spaces, these are, you know, perfect environments. As soon as you step into a classroom, you feel like mai, whether you're learning te reo Māori or you're learning something else. So I think our taiao in terms of the space that we work in hākinakina are perfect classrooms opportunity. Just share a kiwaha, to share a whakatauki, to converse in te reo Māori or to fully immerse an environment. So different stages and opportunities. So yeah, kia ora tātou.
Kāre aku kōrero e tuatu I tērā. Ki tōku nei whakaro kua whakakapi a tangohi tō tātou kōrero I tēnei rangi. I guess, yeah, use what you have as a big kind of thing for us as our tamariki get older. And it's similar to what Stacey and Scotty were talking about. As our tamariki get older, we kind of need to grow our vocab. And that's okay. Like, we don't know all the kupu. Have those dictionaries, have your phones around to kind of find those kupu, make up kupu. That's also all good. The main thing is that communication, It's just being able to communicate. No matter kind of what domain you are in. So, yeah.
Do you come from Ngāti Ine as well?
Like kata, like there's a borderline. Ka nui tērā maku.
Kare kōrero e tāpiri. Hoi anō e mihi ana ki a tātou. Mihi ana Tax, mihi ana Gianna. Fellas pretty much said everything that needed to be said. Yeah, I think same thing along the lines of like hākinakina. E ai ki te kōrero mena, you know, ka whakamahi ato tina nana kia maro ai tō tū, and tiakina tō tinana kia pakiri ai o whakaro. You know, when we have the ability to train, have the ability to get into sports and stuff, till it's like permitting power, you know, only by, you know, constant regard for our health and all our holistic health, a tinana, wairua, a hine ngaro, especially a hine ngaro, you know, then can our thoughts and the way that we respond to things like challenges and adversity will then be reciprocal. You know, being able to manage ourselves through times of stress, times of adversity. Yeah, ora.
Koe tēnā koutou, engari ngā raupa, engari ro paunamu, e te tira hou, ko whai wahi mai ki tō tātou kaupapa nei, I roto I tō tātou whare kōrero, whare matihiko, o Toi Tangata tēnei te hui a tau, 2023, kōrero, e kōrera ngā mihi e oti, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.